The dust in my cell breathes without wind. I am Iskandar Khaim, former librarian of the Thousand Sons, 3rd Fellowship, and I record this confession aboard the black ship Quietus as the suppressant dust within my null ward cell inhales and exhales in perfect rhythm, reciting the litany of abjuration backward in a cadence that should not exist. The particles rise and fall like chess movements, whispering Su morph Su reviled with each exhalation, the sacred words inverted, yet somehow still reverent in their blasphemy. Temperature reads -7 degrees Celsius on my augmetic chronometer, though the cell's thermal regulators indicate optimal 21 degrees. Humidity variance fluctuates between 12 and 43% in 9-second intervals, creating condensation that forms perfect nonagon patterns on the adamantine walls before sublimating without heat source. The hymn intervals echo through the ship's vox horns every 41 minutes, marking purge cycles that should cleanse my cell of warp residue. Yet the dust continues its impossible respiration. My containment counter displays 39 minutes, 14 seconds until the next hymn hour purge. Cell doors throughout this block cycle open in a 9-step pattern. 3 primary locks, 3 secondary seals, 3 final ward barriers. I have counted this sequence 47 times since my incarceration began. Each cycle follows the same rhythm as the breathing dust. Frost forms on the ward sigils etched into my cell door, crystallizing into shapes that hurt to observe directly. The ice sketches, nonagon geometry with mathematical precision. 9-sided figures nested within 9-sided figures, creating depth that extends beyond the metal surface. When I trace these patterns with my finger, the frost does not melt despite my body heat. Instead, it grows warmer, pulsing with a rhythm that matches my heartbeat. The ash swirls like coalescing sinew, gathering into formations that suggest familiar shapes before dispersing when my attention focuses too intently. I recognize fragments of armor patterns, the curve of a gorget, the sweep of a pauldron bearing the scarab and scroll of my lost legion. All is dust, I whisper, the words emerging as both lament and invocation, and the particles respond by arranging themselves into the high Gothic script of those same syllables. The machine cant speaks of stable atmospheric pressure, optimal oxygen mixture, and 0 airflow variance. Yet the Auspex readings contradict this data, showing massive particulate displacement patterns that pulse in 9-beat sequences. The dust rises and falls in breathing patterns, while sensors insist no air moves within this sealed chamber. My augmetic left eye provides thermal imaging that reveals the impossible truth. The dust maintains a constant temperature of 37 degrees Celsius, human body heat, while the cell walls radiate cold. Each particle glows with minute bioelectrical activity. Neurons firing in microscopic cascades that spell out fragments of the enumerations of Prospero. Knowledge made manifest, consciousness distributed through matter itself. The ward barriers hum with suppression frequencies designed to prevent psychic manifestation, yet I feel no dampening of my abilities. Instead, the null fields seem to amplify something else, creating resonance chambers where thought becomes substance and memory takes physical form. The dust remembers. It recalls the burning of Prospero, the screams of my battle brothers, as flesh became powder, and the weight of choices that damned us all. I measure each breath with clinical precision. Inhalation, 4 seconds. Particles settling toward the floor. Pause, 2 seconds. Perfect stillness. Exhalation, 4 seconds. Dust rising in helical spirals that trace the edges of nonagon geometry. The pattern never varies, never falters, as if synchronized to some cosmic metronome that counts down to an appointed hour. The litany of abjuration continues its backward recitation, each syllable carried on motes of dust that brush against my skin, like whispered prayers. The inversion creates new meaning, new purpose, new horror in its implications. The cell tastes of iron and old incense, phantom flavors that should not exist in this sterile environment. My chronometer displays 37 minutes, 49 seconds until purge cycle activation. The hymn gongs begin their preparatory resonance, deep bass notes that vibrate through the ship's superstructure and cause the dust to dance in increasingly agitated patterns. Each tone carries harmonic frequencies that should dispel warp taint, yet the particles grow more active with each sacred note. The frost on my cell door shifts, rearranging itself into new configurations. 9 points of ice form a perfect star, then collapse inward to create a spiral, then expand outward into a mandala of crystalline complexity that defies the metal's flat surface. The ward sigils flicker beneath the ice, their protective runes struggling against some unseen pressure that builds with each passing second. I press my palm against the door and feel vibration traveling through the adamantine. Not the ship's engines or atmospheric processes, but something more deliberate. The Quietus is a tomb ship that carries its living cargo to judgment or oblivion, and now it seems it is becoming something else, something more. The very environment is breaking its own rules. The dust adheres to my skin, a fine gray film that tastes of old books and dried blood. It is the dust of Prospero, I am certain, though how it has come to this null ward cell, miles from any warp rift, is another impossible fact to add to the growing list. The all is dust motif, once a mournful reminder of my legion's fate, now feels like a living entity, a presence in the cell, a silent, knowing observer. The hymn gong tolls, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrates through the adamantium bulkheads. From the bulkhead to my left comes a sound. Not the usual creak of shifting metal, but something deliberate. 9 slow knocks, spaced exactly 3 seconds apart, traveling through the metal in a sequence that maps the points of a nonagon. Each knock resonates with hollow finality, the sound moving from left to right, then right to left, tracing the perimeter of a 9-sided figure. The 9th knock falls exactly where the bulkhead numerals read 9N, my cell, the lock, a heavy, reinforced mechanism designed to withstand the most determined assault, unlatches by itself with a soft click, its bolt retracting inward. The indicator glows green in the dim emergency lighting, and listens. The corridor beyond my cell tastes of iron and incense, metallic tang coating my tongue despite the recycled atmosphere's sterile filtration. I step across the threshold, bare feet finding purchase on deck plating that radiates cold through supposedly heated surfaces. The emergency lumens flicker in 9-second intervals, casting amber shadows that dance with mathematical precision along the bulkheads. My chronometer reads 34 minutes, 18 seconds until purge cycle activation. I resume clinical documentation, though my hands tremble as I activate the recording stylus embedded in my left gauntlet. The corridor extends 47 meters before terminating at a security checkpoint, blast doors sealed with inquisitorial rosettes that gleam like fresh blood. The knocks resume their metronomic pattern, traveling through bulkheads with relentless precision. 9 knocks per minute, spaced at 6.67-second intervals, each impact resonating through the ship's superstructure like an audible heartbeat. The sound moves in waves, flowing from cell to cell in sequences that map the detention block's layout with impossible accuracy. The machine can't contradict environmental evidence with systematic precision. Pressure readings indicate optimal atmospheric conditions, while my augmetic sensors detect fluctuations that make breathing laborious. The air feels viscous, saturated with particles too small to observe yet substantial enough to impede respiration. Environmental horror intensifies throughout the observation corridor. Frost forms inside warded lumen strips, crystallizing on surfaces that should remain above freezing due to thermal regulation systems. The ice creates patterns that hurt to observe directly. 9 pointed stars nested within 9 pointed stars, fractals extending beyond the physical boundaries of their surfaces. Vox reliquaries mounted along bulkheads chant static in harmonious cadences, their sacred speakers producing sounds that should not emerge from mechanical devices. The static forms words in High Gothic, then Low Gothic, then languages I recognize from Prosperine archives. Dead tongues of a burned world speaking through Imperial technology. She appears like a subtraction rather than a rival. Sister of Silence, Liren Fith stands motionless. Before a security grate, power armor bearing the eagle and rose of her order, helm removed to reveal a face carved from pale marble. Her null aura creates immediate sensory distortion. Sound dims to muffled whispers, colors desaturate to gray monotones, and the iron taste becomes metallic ash. Yet something impossible occurs within her presence. Warp residue precipitates as ash rime on her skin, crystallizing into delicate frost patterns that trace her face and neck. The particles adhere for precisely 3 seconds before sliding off as if repelled by invisible force, leaving condensation trails that evaporate without heat source. Librarian, she signs in battle cant, fingers forming angular tactical gestures. Her voice, when she speaks, emerges as whisper, cutting through ambient noise like blade through silk. The anomaly accelerates. Reality shows stress fractures, despite nominal Geller field integrity. Behind the security grate, I observe impossible transformation. Astropath choir member Tertius undergoes systematic dissolution. His flesh does not burn or decay. It evaporates into moving low Gothic letters that adhere to security mesh like living script. Each letter glows with pale phosphorescence, spelling fragments of astropathic transmissions in perfect calligraphy. The words read, "Help us, help us, help us," in endless repetition, script flowing across mesh in spirals following nonagon geometry. The astropath's robes collapse empty, while his consciousness persists as living text, each letter pulsing with terrified heartbeat rhythm. The curse spreads through liturgy, I inform Liren, voice barely audible within her null field suppression. Each prayer feeds the pattern. Each hymn provides transformation fuel. She nods once, Gladius clearing its sheath with practiced efficiency. The blade gleams with null field resonance, edge distorting light in ways suggesting it cuts more than mere matter. Sound dies completely within her aura's radius, not muffled, but absolutely absent, creating pressure that makes my teeth ache. We form wary alliance born of necessity and mutual expertise. She requires my knowledge to interpret the anomaly's progression, while I need her null field to blunt psychic resonance building within my bones like accumulated pressure. The curse embedded in my marrow responds to the ship's liturgical environment, growing stronger with each hymn interval. The knocks continue relentless pattern, traveling through bulkheads with increasing intensity. 9 per minute, never varying, synchronized to some cosmic chronometer, counting down to a appointed hour. The sound carries harmonic frequencies that make teeth ache and cause frost patterns to pulse with sympathetic vibration. Lyran's null aura creates negative space in frost formations, carving zones of absolute clarity through crystalline impossibilities. Within these gaps, reality appears stable, unmarked by geometric violations proliferating elsewhere. Yet frost rearranges itself to flow around her presence, creating channels suggesting intelligence behind pattern growth. Transformation follows systematic progression, she signs, fingers tracing tactical assessments. Flesh becomes script. Script becomes geometry. Geometry becomes the observation gallery's primary lumen strip explodes in crystalline fragments, each shard refracting amber light into prismatic spectra, painting non-agon halos on bulkheads. Fragments land in perfect geometric arrangements, positions mapping constellation patterns I recognize from Prospero's night sky. My chronometer displays 29 minutes, 43 seconds until purge cycle activation. Countdown continues with mechanical precision, while reality bends around us like heated metal under stress. The knocks grow louder, more insistent, nine-fold pattern echoing through superstructure with increasing resonance. We reach junction, where walls buckle outward in quiet protest. Stress fractures spider across adamantine, thin as hairs, white as old salt. The ship's Geller field whispers contentment through hull, as if seas were calm. The seas are not calm. Lyran places her gauntleted palm against blast door's surface, testing. Her null field flares, pressure drop making my teeth ring. Then, with grinding sound barely audible, 9 hairline fractures appear beneath her touch. They spread outward, arranging themselves into perfect nonagon seal, geometric pattern neither of us placed there. The fractures glow with pale phosphorescence, pulsing in rhythm with breathing dust, evaporating astropath, and impossible knots mapping our doom with mathematical precision. The corridor bends toward the transit shroud with architectural precision that defies the Quietus's original construction blueprints. I recognize the spreading fractures beneath Lyran's touch as Tizcan's sigil architecture. Prosperine geometry reinventing imperial metal through systematic mathematical infection. The nonagon lines flow like living script across adamantine bulkheads, transforming ship superstructure into something that remembers the libraries of my dead home world. This is reconstruction, not corruption, I inform Lyran, voice muffled within her null field's oppressive silence. The ship's bones learn new forms through geometric propagation. My chronometer reads 26 minutes, 11 seconds until purge cycle activation. The 9-sided pattern spread with viral persistence, each nonagon spawning smaller iterations that burrow deeper into hull architecture. Metal becomes manuscript, adamantine becomes parchment, and we walk through pages of an impossible codex, writing itself around us with each hymn interval. Rule changes escalate with systematic precision that defies rational explanation. Memory becomes unreliable as stenciled hazard glyphs shift meaning depending on observation angle and neural focus. The warning fire main transforms to firmament when viewed peripherally. Same red stencil paint, same flaking edges, as if angle-altered alphabet rather than perception. Lyran signs fire main in battle count, while I observe firmament on identical lettering. Both readings remain simultaneously true and false. Small hazards accumulate like gathering storm pressure throughout the detention corridor. Lumen crystals embedded in overhead panels hum at 9 Hz resonance, their sacred illumination pulsing in rhythm with breathing dust and relentless knock patterns. My eyelids feel granular with phantom particles. Sensation of microscopic dust grinding against corneal surfaces despite atmospheric readings showing optimal clarity. The machine cant interrupts with systematic refusal. Binary prayers denying access to sealed shrine sections. Yet blast doors respond to non-agon geometry spreading across their surfaces. Locks cycling through engagement sequences following 9-step patterns rather than Imperial security protocols. Sacred mechanisms learn new obedience through geometric infection. Environmental layering intensifies through thermal manipulation that defies atmospheric control systems entirely. Temperature climbs to uncomfortable warmth. Sweat beading on skin despite regulated environment, then snaps to bitter chill without transition warning. Frost forms on exhaled breath, while thermal sensors insist on stable 21 degrees Celsius. The transitions follow rhythm synchronized to spreading geometry rather than mechanical cause. Pressure feels soupy and oppressive. Atmosphere thickening like viscous fluid, requiring effort to process through respiratory systems. My augmetic sensors detect standard atmospheric composition, while lungs struggle against air that has gained weight and substance beyond molecular explanation. Each breath tastes of old parchment and dried ink, phantom flavors bleeding through from memories of Prosperine scriptoriums. Lyran's null aura creates negative space in frost patina, coating bulkheads with crystalline precision. Her presence carves silence shaped like a person, absence given form, void walking among substance. The frost flows around her like water around a stone, creating channels suggesting intelligence behind pattern growth and adaptive behavior. Yet frost demonstrates systematic learning, rearranging itself to emulate familiar shapes despite her disruption. Ice crystals form configurations resembling rubricae helm nodules, the distinctive sensor arrays of my battle brothers' transformed armor. Each formation lasts precisely 9 seconds before dissolving and reforming in new positions, creating memorial gallery honoring the dead through frozen water architecture. The curse spreads through liturgical observation, I confess, words emerging as whisper within her silence zone. Each witness feeds the pattern. Each prayer provides transformation fuel. She signs tactical query in battle cant, fingers forming angular questions about containment procedures and threat assessment protocols. Her gladius remains drawn null field resonance causing blade edge to distort light in ways suggesting it cuts more than physical matter alone. I resist speaking the curse's true name, the title etched into marrow during Prospero's final hours. The mnemonic grimoire carved into bone and sinew, designed to activate when exposed to concentrated liturgical environment like aboard this tomb ship. Each hymn interval feeds the working, every prayer strengthening bonds between memory and reality through systematic resonance. All is dust, I whisper, words emerging as involuntary comfort against mounting environmental horror. Yet the phrase becomes unintended prayer fuel, each syllable resonating with breathing particles and spreading geometry throughout ship architecture. The motif transforms from lament to invocation, from mourning to summoning, as the curse learns to feed on its own expression through acoustic propagation. The transit shrine's blast doors bear non-agon seals pulsing with phosphorescent light, 9-sided patterns nested within 9-sided patterns, extending beyond physical surfaces into dimensions optical sensors cannot properly process. Each seal rotates slowly, clockwise then counterclockwise, following rhythm synchronized to my heartbeat rather than mechanical timing. Temperature snaps from warm to freezing without thermal transition, frost forming on augmetic implants in patterns matching spreading geometry. Ice traces familiar shapes across metallic surfaces. Scarab and scroll iconography of the Thousand Sons, rendered in crystalline perfection that should not exist within Imperial architecture. Lyran's null field flares with increasing intensity, pressure drop making teeth ache as reality struggles against her presence like opposing magnetic fields. The silence zone expands, carving larger gaps in frost patterns, while geometry adapts by growing more complex around disruption points. Overhead cherub drones provide Auspex readings, contradicting visual evidence with systematic precision. Their sensors detect human silhouettes marching in formation beyond sealed doors. Perfect tactical spacing, measured cadence, disciplined movement suggesting military precision and coordination. Yet biosigns read as airborne particulates, consciousness distributed through matter rather than contained within flesh. The dead learning to march again through geometry and prayer. Within the transit shrine, the Aquila icon's wings have bent into a 9-point star with mathematical precision. Each feather now a geometric line extending beyond the metal's physical surface into dimensions my augmetic sensors cannot properly process. The sacred eagle's transformation speaks of systematic corruption spreading through Imperial iconography. Devotional symbols, learning new meanings through liturgical observation and geometric infection. My chronometer displays 23 minutes, 14 seconds, until purge cycle activation. I confess the core violation, while Lyran's null field creates expanding zones of crushing silence. Her marble features impassive as she processes implications with tactical precision. The truth emerges like blood from a precisely calculated wound, systematic and inevitable. I seeded a Prosperine reverse rubric into myself during Prospero's burning, I admit, voice muffled within her oppressive silence. Where Ahriman's working made flesh into dust and names into armor, I inverted the equations through systematic manipulation of causal relationships. This ritual gives dust names and flesh script, transforming the quietus into a book that writes its readers. Prayers become ink, breath becomes pagination. The taste of saffron grit coats my tongue as I speak, as if the confession draws the desert through a wound in time. Each word feeds the pattern, every syllable contributing to geometric infection, spreading throughout ship architecture with viral persistence. Environmental horror escalates through negative space, dominating sanctum architecture with oppressive weight. Prayer niches stand empty despite scheduled devotional periods. Alcoves designed for contemplation now serving as absence given form. Votive flames burn cold blue rather than sacred gold, their light casting shadows that extend in wrong directions, while smoke flows along deck, plating instead of rising through thermal convection. Each hymn interval feeds the working, I continue, words emerging as whisper against mounting pressure. Every prayer provides transformation, fuel, while concentrated liturgical environment creates optimal conditions for geometric infection. The ship's own devotions harvest the crew, transforming faithful into letters and letters into flesh through systematic violation of conservation laws. The non-agon door flexes without opening, adamantine surface bending like living tissue while maintaining structural integrity through impossible material properties. Not hinges cycling, but pages turning, reality's manuscript advancing through narrative sequence without readers to guide progression. The metal groans at a pitch that resonates in tooth roots, and reality thins at the edges. Lyran's Gladius reflects null field distortion, blade edge cutting more than physical matter while she processes tactical implications with battlefield efficiency. Her silence expands to encompass larger shrine sections, creating temporary stability zones within dimensional fractures, while geometry adapts through complexity multiplication around disruption points. "End the source," she murmurs, and the way she says it is prayer and verdict together. Her approach carries battlefield precision, null field expanding, while Gladius maintains ready position for systematic threat neutralization. As she steps forward, her null field flares with desperate intensity, silence not fading but cut like blade through throat. Sound does not dim, it is severed. The omnipresent hum of ship systems vanishes. Vox reliquaries fall silent. Even the whisper of atmospheric recycling ceases entirely. The effect creates absolute absence that makes teeth ache with pressure differential. The present tense spike strikes with overwhelming intensity. The ship holds its breath. All sound ceases. Not muffled, but absolutely absent, creating vacuum of intent, as if reality has paused its own narration. Even the dust forgets to rise, particles hanging motionless in air that has gained weight and substance. Then the knock sequences resume with accelerated pace, traveling through bulkheads with frantic intensity while maintaining mathematical precision. 9 knocks per minute becomes 18, then 27. Multiplication following geometric progression, while sound gains weight and substance beyond normal acoustic properties. The rhythm runs the bulkheads like hunting dogs, mapping nonagons inside nonagons. Environmental horror peaks as cell block vox horns crackle with purge protocol warnings, sacred speakers producing countdown sequences that should cleanse warp taint, yet instead feed pattern growth through liturgical resonance. Each warning provides transformation fuel, devotional energy, condensing into matter through systematic violation of conservation laws. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition warnings. Atmospheric control systems failing against geometric infection, spreading through environmental regulation networks. The shrine fills with scents of ancient parchment mixed with hot dust. Phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums transform to ash. "All is dust," I whisper, not as doctrine but as warning. The blue flames arch at the words, pulling long on the deck like ink under a magnet. The phrase becomes unintended prayer fuel, each syllable resonating with spreading geometry throughout ship architecture. The nonagon seal begins autonomous rotation with grinding mechanical precision. 9-sided pattern turning clockwise, then counterclockwise, while following rhythm synchronized to my heartbeat rather than ship systems. Each rotation exposes wider gaps between seal and door frame, revealing corridor beyond that breeze with measured rhythm. The shrine's spine flexes, and a new corridor writes itself into alignment with ours, lines in a ledger closing on a sum. Beyond, in light that seems to have grain to it, dust drifts in perfect human armor configurations, gorgets, pauldrons, greaves, cuisses, vambraces, each component skinned with conscious matter. Helmets with scarab crests and red gold trim maintain tactical spacing, bolter weights implied by absence. I know the pattern. The pattern knows me. 100 suits of armor march without bodies. Consciousness distributed through matter while maintaining military discipline despite transformation into aware particulates. They are arranged in order, 9 ranks of 9 and a remnant. Tactical formation perfect. The silent army of a book that writes its readers. The cell block corridor opens into the purification way, like a throat swallowing light, and Lyran and I form a functional dyad through tactical necessity. Her silence suppresses warp bleed, while my lore interprets the geometric transformations spreading through ship architecture with viral persistence. We move with measured precision, her null aura creating a pocket of crushing absence, while I navigate by naming violations as one names diseases. My chronometer displays 22 minutes, 31 seconds until purge cycle activation. The countdown continues with mechanical precision, while reality bends around us like heated adamantine under stress. Each step carries us deeper into impossibility made manifest, prayers becoming substance and geometry, learning to reproduce through liturgical observation. Micro-hazards accumulate throughout the purification way, with mathematical precision that defies atmospheric control systems entirely. Condensation forms perfect 9-droplet rosettes on bulkheads, each water sphere maintaining spherical integrity for exactly 9 seconds before evaporating without heat source. The droplets pulse with bioluminescent activity, microscopic organisms spelling Prosperine numerals in phosphorescent script. Incense smoke from prayer alcoves flows along deck plating rather than rising through thermal convection. Viscous streams following nonagon geometry etched into metal flooring. The sacred vapors carry scents of saffron and myrrh mixed with burning parchment. Phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of dead libraries and scriptoriums transformed to ash. Communication snippets punctuate our movement with tactical updates that contradict environmental evidence through systematic denial. Command insists on operational stability while we navigate through corridors where prayer niches stand empty and votive flames burn cold blue, their smoke creeping along deck plating to join the greater tide flowing uphill. Containment requires sacrifice, I inform Lyran, voice muffled within her null field's oppressive silence. The curse cannot be destroyed through conventional means, only redirected into your null aura, burned there within absolute silence. Accept the inevitable cost, she signs tactical query in battle camp, fingers forming angular questions about threat assessment and elimination protocols. Her gladius remains drawn, null field resonance causing the blade edge to distort light in ways suggesting it cuts more than physical matter alone. You cut me down and you cut the lock, I continue, words emerging as whisper against mounting environmental horror. The door remains. The ritual feeds on its own expression. There is only one containment with chance of finality. Redirect the working into your field and burn it there. It will burn you. It might burn me. It might burn the book. Her marble features remain impassive, yet I observe minute tension in jaw muscles, suggesting comprehension of implications. The null field would consume the curse through negation, but the process would expand her silence zone beyond sustainable limits, creating a widening void in reality itself. Environmental horror builds through sensory layering that assaults augmented perceptions with systematic precision. Copper taste coats tongue despite recycled atmosphere's sterile filtration. Metallic flavor suggesting blood oxidation without injury source. Deck tremors vibrate through superstructure like slow heartbeats. Rhythm synchronized to breathing dust and spreading geometry rather than mechanical systems. Rubrique footprints appear in ash, accumulating along corridor edges. Perfect boot impressions, suggesting power armor, weight distribution without bodies above to create them. Each print glows with pale phosphorescence. Boot treads spelling fragments of Prosperine battle count in microscopic script that hurts to observe directly. I found myself matching stride lengths unconsciously. 33 inches. Combat pace. I was taller then. Leyren's null aura creates expanding zones of absolute silence, pressure drop making teeth ache as reality struggles against her presence like opposing magnetic fields. The silence carves gaps in frost patterns and geometric growth, yet geometry adapts by increasing complexity around disruption points, learning to flow around her like water around stone. Rule bending accelerates beyond rational containment as vox horns throughout the Purification Way begin chanting litanies in reverse sequence. The backward recitation maintains reverent and pious tone despite inverted syllable structure. Su morph, su reviled, sacred words becoming blasphemy, yet retaining holy resonance through acoustic manipulation. The effect is obscene and holy simultaneously. Stakes crystallize with purge timer activation, frozen at 9 minutes, while each hymn verse feeds pattern growth through liturgical resonance. The sacred songs provide transformation fuel, every prayer strengthening bonds between memory and reality through systematic acoustic propagation. All is dust slips from my mouth unbidden, and the ash swirls in answer, like a delighted child of accidental prayer. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition, frost forming on exhaled breath, while sweat beads on skin simultaneously. Atmospheric pressure feels viscous and oppressive, requiring effort to process through respiratory systems, despite optimal oxygen composition readings from ship sensors. We reach a transept where the Purification Way branches toward High Ship Sancta. The air thickens here, soupy and viscous with breath ink, every step a page turn in reality's manuscript. Pilgrim sensors swing from cables without wind, pendulums describing 9-point arcs as if compelled by invisible rubric. The purge sirens begin their wailing crescendo, klaxons designed to warn of impending liturgical cleansing throughout ship sections. Yet mid-wail, the sirens cut to absolute silence, sounds severed like blade through throat. The absence that follows is not Lyran's crafted quiet, but a vacuum of intent, as if the ship has paused its own narration. Then the replacement emerges. 9 unintelligible syllables, drifting from the navigator's sanctum, words in languages predating human speech, yet somehow familiar to ears trained in Prosperine linguistics. They have no vowels, yet they sing. They have no consonants, yet they strike. They taste of saffron and hot stone, and the grit of red desert sand. We approach the sanctum through corridors increasingly dominated by geometric infection, nonagon patterns spreading across every surface with viral persistence. Lyran's aura carves her outline in frost patina, absence shaped like a person, while the ice rearranges itself to emulate say helm nodules, paying cold tribute to brothers who are and are not. The navigator's door appears through amber emergency lighting like revelation made manifest. Adamantine surface bears a sheath of glass dust, ground crystal from broken panes, from lenses, from eyepieces, from the very air made be. It has been fused into a clear scab over metal, so smooth that lumen reflections slip across it like fish. Around the door frame, a non-argon halo has been etched so deep, the metal seems to bleed light. Centered upon the door, painted in careful strokes of pitch and gilt, is a closed third eye, the navigator's psychic organ rendered in perfect anatomical detail despite being mere pigment on adamantine. Sealed, watching, waiting. The corridor approaching the navigator's sanctum transforms into a gallery of impossible devotion.
ash piles coalescing into perfect effigies of kneeling penitents. Each figure maintains human proportions with mathematical precision: shoulder width, spine curvature, genuflection angles, their helmets crammed with packed dust that spills through visor slits in measured streams. The formations taste of iron and incense and something else: old vellum, warm from scriptorium lamps that burned 10,000 years ago. My chronometer displays 18 minutes, 47 seconds until purge cycle activation. Lyran's null aura drags shadows of absolute absence over the tableau. Pressure drop, making teeth ache as the penitent figures lean toward her, silence like congregants straining to hear sermons that can never be spoken. We encounter armsmen, Squad Tertius, frozen mid-reload, blast rifles raised in perfect firing stances despite complete absence of respiratory movement. When Lyran's shoulder brushes the sergeant, he collapses, not as corpse, but as script scales. Skin splits along hairline glyphs, muscle unwinds into tight columns of low Gothic, and the whole cuttlefish spill of a man flutters away in drafts that do not exist. His magazine clatters, breaks into letter chits, and skitters to rest-spelling fragments of tactical doctrine in crooked heaps. The machine can't confirm systematic transformation with
clinical precision. 0 heartbeat readings, while massive particulate spikes suggest awareness dispersed through breathing dust rather than contained within flesh. The crew has become atmosphere, consciousness learning to inhabit matter itself. Lyran's gladius cuts through dust armor formations with null field resonance, blade edge carving absolute silence through impossible geometries. Yet severed formations recoalesce within seconds, letters rearranging themselves into new configurations, words becoming sentences, sentences becoming prayers. By dust are we known shifts to by dust are we named, then by dust are we bound, as the text learns from each disruption, adapting through systematic observation. I recognize fragments of my legion's library's oaths woven through Imperial litanies with horrifying precision, creating motif collisions between loyalist and traitor prayers. Knowledge through sacrifice becomes sacrifice through knowledge, while maintaining identical acoustic resonance. Blasphemous harmonies that sound reverent, despite inverted meaning. The 9-knock pattern returns with increased complexity, traveling through bulkheads with metronomic precision. Yet spacing now maps stellar positions from Prospero's sky rather than ship architecture. Each knock corresponds to constellation points visible from Tisca's highest towers: Canopus, Rigel, Vega. The knocks name dead stars in rhythm, synchronized to my heartbeat. 9 primary luminaries, 9 secondary stars, 9 asterisms, mapping night sky above libraries that burned in atomic fire. Small rule changes manifest as floor-grade tilts without maneuvering alarms or gravitational explanations. Deck plating slopes at impossible angles, while augmetic sensors insist on level surfaces. Walking requires conscious effort against angles existing only in observation, reality bending around liturgical geometry like heated adamantine under stress. Environmental horror escalates through sensory layering that assaults augmented perceptions. Copper taste coats tongue despite sterile atmospheric filtration, metallic flavor suggesting oxidized blood without injury source. Incense smoke flows along deck plating in defiance of thermal convection. Viscous streams following non-Agan geometry, etched into metal flooring. The investigation reveals systematic progression, human forms becoming living text through geometric infection, flesh converting to script scales bearing devotional content.
Devotion becomes literal ink for an impossible manuscript, prayers providing pigment, while breath supplies pagination through respiratory rhythm. The ship is a palimpsest. Our prayers scrape the ink, but never erase it. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth, without thermal transition warnings. Atmospheric pressure feels viscous and oppressive, requiring conscious effort to process through respiratory systems despite optimal oxygen composition readings. The air thickens with breath ink.
Every step a page turn in reality's manuscript. Lyran's null field creates expanding zones of absolute silence, carving gaps in text formations, while geometry adapts by increasing complexity around disruption points. Script learns to flow around her influence like liquid around stone, rearranging into rubrici helm nodules and scarab scroll iconography. Memorial tributes rendered in frozen condensation. We reach the sanctum as environmental violations peak beyond rational containment. The painted third eye upon adamantine surface begins autonomous movement, eyelid muscles flexing despite being mere pigment on metal. Pupil dilates and contracts in rhythm, synchronized to stellar knock patterns. Iris shifting from brown to gold to crystalline blue. The door's glass dust scab captures our reflections as thin ghosts, while humidity beads along the sill in pooled crescents that tremble to rhythm I feel in my jaw. The Nonagan halo pulses with cold internal light, illuminating motes that dance around its edges like prayer wheels spinning in vacuum. The sanctum door flexes open in 9 precise increments, each movement accompanied by grinding sounds suggesting metal learning flexibility beyond engineering specifications. Not hinges opening, but spine turning, pages yielding rather than mechanisms cycling. Adamantine bends like living tissue while maintaining structural integrity through impossible material properties. With every increment, air size and pooled humidity quivers to ascending notes, counting to 9 without numerals. The chamber beyond reveals itself as cold chapel of brass and salt, the navigator's throne sitting empty, harness straps buckled, third eye hood thrown back like wilted petal. Before the chair rests an Astartes-sized sarcophagus bearing prosperine sigils etched with mathematical precision. Scarab and scroll iconography nested within nonagon geometry, extending beyond physical surfaces into dimensions optical senses cannot properly process. The sarcophagus sweats, fine mist, resting in pooled humidity that vibrates with 9-note coronach. Each note carries harmonic frequencies suggesting choir voices, yet no singers remain to produce the sounds. The melody emerges from moisture itself, liquid learning to sing through systematic acoustic manipulation. The coronach speaks of endings and beginnings, of dust remembering flesh, of a silence learning to scream. The last note searches for its place in the sequence, waiting. Inside the sanctum, the navigator's absence creates a void filled with wrongness that makes teeth ache and augmetic implants hum with sympathetic resonance. His throne sits empty, yet occupied, harness straps buckled around nothing, while the impression of weight maintains perfect depressions in worn leather cushioning. Where his third eye should pierce the warp's malevolent depths, a dust gasket shaped like a closed eyelid seals the psychic organ, particles arranged with surgical precision, complete with frost filament lashes that seem to dream behind sealed lids. My chronometer displays 16 minutes, 47 seconds until purge cycle activation. The countdown continues with mechanical precision, while reality bends around systematic violations that defy rational explanation. Lyran's null aura creates expanding zones of crushing silence, pressure drop making teeth ache as her presence carves geometric absences through spreading patterns. Star charts crowd the sanctum walls, glowing with constellations that never existed in any sector's night sky. Mildew has drawn false heavens over lacquered parchment, tracing unfamiliar asterisms in green-black blooms that pulse with bioluminescent activity. Where Gothic script should mark Terran North, I read Prosperine South in phosphorescent spores. Where the Emperor's path should cut through stellar cartography, a ninefold knot loops back into itself like a serpent consuming its tail and naming each bite with mathematical precision. The warp maps reveal systematic deception with horrifying clarity. Navigation charts show the quieters traveling through a figure of 9 rather than normal space. Our route describing a massive nonagon across stellar distances, measured in light years and liturgical intervals. Each course correction, each translation point, each Geller field fluctuation has been pre-written, calculated to feed the curse etched into my bones through systematic liturgical exposure over months of careful preparation. The ship has been arranged, I informed Lyran, voice muffled within her null field's oppressive silence. Roots, prayers, purge intervals, everything orchestrated to complete an ancient, working through imperial devotion, harvested as transformation fuel. The machine can't confirms environmental violations with clinical precision that contradicts observable reality through systematic denial. Navigator silence despite active warp translation. Stable Geller fields contradicting the spreading geometric infection. Gravity fluctuations suggesting mass redistribution without structural explanations. The ship's bones learn new physics through liturgical observation and prayer-fueled transformation. Environmental horror escalates through sensory layering that assaults augmented perceptions with systematic precision. The reverse hymn decoding reveals each litany syllable, inking sigil strokes on the sarcophagus surface. Prayers becoming literal pigment, while devotional cadence provides systematic brushwork, creating resurrection geometry. Su morph su reviled traces scarab and scroll, iconography with mathematical precision, each backward word contributing to patterns that extend beyond physical surfaces. Lyran's presence creates silence polygons, dead zones where sigils skip and reality gaps like torn parchment beneath invisible blade edges. Her null aura carves geometric absences through spreading patterns, yet the sigils adapt by increasing complexity around disruption points, learning to flow around her influence like liquid around stone. The silence cuts sound like blade through throat, creating pressure drops that make augmetic implants whine with harmonic distortion. On viewing panes, condensation spells my name in perfect High Gothic script, Iskandar KIM, letters forming through humidity manipulation rather than atmospheric control systems. The moisture pulses with bioluminescent activity, microscopic organisms arranged to create phosphorescent calligraphy that hurts to observe directly. My identity becomes environmental feature, consciousness bleeding through matter itself in systematic violation of biological laws. The communication plays backward, yet remains reverent, inverted syllables, maintaining pious tone despite reversed acoustic structure. Sacred words become blasphemy through temporal inversion while retaining holy resonance. An obscenity that sounds like prayer, devotion corrupted through systematic manipulation of liturgical cadence and harmonic frequency. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition warnings, frost forming on exhaled breath while sweat beads on skin simultaneously. Atmospheric pressure feels viscous and oppressive, requiring conscious effort to process through respiratory systems, despite optimal oxygen composition readings from ship sensors that insist on environmental stability. The sarcophagus sweats fine mist that pools around its base in crescents, vibrating to 9-note coronach. Each note carries harmonic frequencies, suggesting choir voices despite absence of singers to produce the sounds. The melody emerges from moisture itself, liquid learning to sing through systematic acoustic manipulation, water becoming voice through geometric infection, spreading throughout ship architecture. Environmental details emphasize premeditated orchestration with horrifying precision that spans decades of preparation. Every prayer calculated for maximum liturgical resonance, every breath measured to provide optimal atmospheric conditions, every heartbeat timed to synchronize with spreading geometry. The curse requires specific environmental triggers, astropathic choirs for psychic amplification, navigator's third eye for warp site focusing, concentrated liturgy for transformation fuel. Foreshadowing builds as systematic nature becomes clear through accumulated evidence mounting like legal testimony. This is not random corruption spreading through ship architecture, but precise ritual engineering orchestrated across years of careful preparation and positioning. The quietus has been selected, modified, and positioned to serve as a resurrection chamber. Imperial tomb ship transformed into prospering rebirth matrix through systematic infiltration. My augmetic chronometer displays fluctuating readings as temporal stability degrades around systematic ritual completion. Minutes stretch like elastic, while seconds snap past with mechanical precision, time becoming substance rather than measurement through geometric manipulation of reality's fundamental constants and liturgical rhythm disruption. The coronach reaches its crescendo, 8 notes completed with mathematical precision, while the 9th waits in acoustic suspension, sound held like drawn breath before inevitable exhalation. Moisture vibrates with increasing intensity, pooled humidity learning to resonate with frequencies that should not exist within physical matter, according to Imperial scientific doctrine. Lyran's null field flares with increasing intensity, silence expanding to encompass larger sections of the sanctum, while geometry adapts through complexity multiplication. The sarcophagus sigils pulse with phosphorescent light. 9-sided patterns nested within 9-sided patterns, extending beyond physical surfaces into dimensions optical sensors cannot properly process or catalog. A soft scrape emerges from within the sarcophagus, sounds synchronize perfectly with the 9th note's arrival and completion. Not random noise, but deliberate movement, something shifting position within confined space, adjusting posture after long stillness measured in millennia. The scrape carries acoustic properties suggesting ceramite against adamantine, power armor components grinding against containment surfaces with familiar, terrifying precision. Recognition strikes with horrifying clarity that makes augmetic implants shriek with harmonic feedback. This contains not an enemy relic waiting for destruction, but a waiting brother. A rubric champion preserved through systematic preparation, maintained in stasis until resurrection conditions achieve optimal configuration through imperial prayer and devotional sacrifice. The curse etched into my bones is designed to resurrect him through imperial devotion, harvesting loyalist prayers as transformation fuel to give dust names and flesh script once more. The truth unfolds like blood from a precisely calculated wound, systematic and inevitable. I confess the curse's architecture while the sarcophagus sweats, fine mist in rhythm with the 9-note coronach. each note carrying harmonic frequencies that make teeth ache, and augmetic implants shriek with sympathetic resonance. The reverse rubric, embedded in my bones, transforms faithful into letters and letters into flesh, harvesting imperial prayers as ink to rewrite armor into sinew, resurrecting rubricae from loyalist devotion through systematic liturgical parasitism. I seeded it into myself during Prospero's burning, I admit, voice muffled within Lyran's expanding null field. Where Ahriman made flesh into dust and names into armor, I inverted the equations. This working gives dust names and flesh script, harvesting faithful prayers as ink while breath provides pagination. It rewrites ceramite into sinew through geometric infection, spreading via liturgical observation and harmonic resonance. My chronometer displays 14 minutes, 23 seconds until purge cycle activation, then flickers and freezes at 0009. The digits struggle between temporal states as reality bends around systematic violation of causality itself. Time becomes substance rather than measurement, minutes stretching like elastic, while seconds snap past with mechanical precision through geometric manipulation of fundamental constants. The confession deepens as environmental violations escalate beyond rational containment. I reveal systematic preparation, spanning decades of careful positioning and infiltration. The curse requires specific triggers, astropathic choirs for psychic amplification, Navigator's third eye for warp site focusing, concentrated liturgical environment for transformation fuel. The Quietus provides optimal conditions through tombship architecture and systematic devotional scheduling. I calculated proximity thresholds to astropathic choirs, to Navigator's psychic emanation. I threaded triggers through quiescent and third eye sight. When conscious will falters, the ship's own liturgies carry the pattern forward without intervention. Your hymns become the pen, your schedules the metronome, your accumulated devotion the solvent that dissolves flesh into script. Lyran's marble features remain impassive as she processes implications with tactical precision. Her gladius reflects null field distortion, blade edge cutting more than physical matter, while silence expands to encompass larger sections of sanctum architecture. She signs battle cant with angular efficiency, fingers forming geometric queries about containment protocols and elimination procedures. Counter-ritual requires sacrifice, she whispers, words emerging as blade cuts through atmospheric pressure. Route everything through null field and burn it there. Accept erasure as cost, becoming widening hole in reality itself, rather than allowing galactic contamination through resurrection spread. The proposal carries horrifying logic with mathematical certainty. Her null aura could consume the curse through systematic negation, but the process would expand her silence zone beyond sustainable limits, creating permanent void in reality's fabric. She would become absence given form, negation walking among substance, until the gap widened, enough to devour star systems through uncontrolled expansion. You would be erased, I respond, tasting copper and old incense on recycled air. Not killed. Unwritten. Your shape would become a whole. Your silence would widen until it consumed the working. Then hunger without object, expanding through dimensional layers like acid through parchment. Zaigs escalate as the coronach accelerates beyond safe acoustic parameters, while purge timers maintain temporal stasis around ritual completion. The 9-note melody reaches crescendo with frequencies that make augmetic implants whine with harmonic feedback, sound becoming substance through geometric infection, rather than propagating through atmospheric. Vibration according to standard acoustic principles. Sensory details intensify through layering that assaults augmented perceptions with systematic precision. Cold sweat beads on skin, despite fluctuating temperature readings. Perspiration carrying metallic taste suggesting oxidized blood without injury source. Deck plating becomes ink slick beneath feet. Surfaces gaining viscous properties through geometric infection, spreading throughout ship architecture with viral persistence. Environmental pressure builds through humidity condensing as black ink dripping from ceiling panels, sacred moisture learning to carry pigment through systematic molecular manipulation. The droplets spell fragments of prosperine battle cant in microscopic script, each letter pulsing with bioluminescent activity that hurts to observe directly through augmentic optical enhancement systems. Air smells of ancient parchment mixed with hot dust. Phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums and libraries transformed to ash during systematic orbital bombardment. The scents carry emotional resonance, triggering involuntary recollections of knowledge lost and brothers fallen through psychic warfare and atmospheric incineration protocols. By 9 and 9, the veil unwinds, slips from my mouth unbidden. The protective verse transforming into completion, catalyst through involuntary recitation. I flinch at my own words, recognizing the motif callback that feeds pattern growth through acoustic propagation. The phrase shifts from protective ward to summoning invocation, liturgical meaning inverting through contextual manipulation and harmonic frequency modulation. The oppressive weight of accumulated prayers becomes physical substance, devotional energy condensing into matter that presses against respiratory systems like viscous fluid. Each hymn interval adds mass to atmospheric composition, liturgical resonance transforming sound into substance through systematic violation of conservation laws and thermodynamic principles governing matter-energy relationships. Lyran's null field flares with desperate intensity, silence expanding to carve larger geometric absences through spreading patterns, while reality adapts by increasing complexity around disruption points. Her presence creates silence polygons, dead zones where sigils skip, and causality gaps, like torn parchment beneath invisible blade edges cutting through dimensional fabric. Better no word than the wrong one, she signs, gladius rotating to test air that has gained grain and texture through geometric infection. Her null aura turns ink droplets to clear water where they cross her outline, then back to black when they slide off, as though silence could bleach pigment, but not prevent its systematic return through molecular reconstruction. The sarcophagus responds to liturgical completion with mechanical precision that defies its apparent age and construction materials. Prosperine sigils pulse with increasing phosphorescent intensity. 9-sided patterns nested within 9-sided patterns, extending beyond physical surfaces into dimensions. Optical sensors cannot properly process through standard imperial measurement protocols and theological understanding. The Coronach reaches perfect acoustic suspension. 9th note held like drawn breath before inevitable exhalation that will complete resurrection sequence with mathematical precision. Sound inhabits matter itself, melody learning to exist within substance, rather than propagating through atmospheric vibration, according to established acoustic theory and harmonic mathematics. Temperature fluctuations intensify between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition, warnings, atmospheric control systems failing to maintain stability against geometric infection. Frost forms on exhaled breath while sweat beads simultaneously, contradictory thermal states existing within identical atmospheric conditions through systematic violation of thermodynamic equilibrium. The sarcophagus lid shifts 9 millimeters, with grinding sound suggesting ceramite against adamantine. Power armor components adjusting position after millennia of stasis maintenance. Then, 9 millimeters more, movement accelerating with mechanical precision as containment seals fail in systematic sequence designed to prevent accidental activation through unauthorized personnel interaction. Red sand exhales from widening gaps between lid and base. Prospero's dust learning to breathe again through systematic resurrection. Particles carrying memories of burned libraries and fallen towers. The sand tastes of saffron and hot stone, and the weight of knowledge lost to orbital bombardment, each grain a fragment of consciousness seeking flesh to inhabit once more. The 9-note coronach becomes a multi-voice chant like a choir of empty helms, each note splitting into harmonic layers that suggest thousands of voices singing in perfect unison despite the sanctum's emptiness. Time fractures around the opening sarcophagus with systematic precision, causality bending like heated adamantine under stress, while reality's manuscript turns pages without readers to guide the narrative sequence. I experience temporal multiplication with horrifying clarity, seeing 9 after-images of Lyran overlapping, like translucent ghosts, while her null field creates cascading echoes through dimensional layers. Each after-image moves at slightly different temporal rates, past, present, and 7 potential futures, existing simultaneously within identical spatial coordinates. Steps taken don't match distances traveled, movement becoming page turns in reality's manuscript rather than physical locomotion through 3-dimensional space. My chronometer displays impossible readings, digits cycling through temporal states that shouldn't exist within linear causality. The display freezes at 0009, then flickers between past and future timestamps, while seconds stretch into minutes, and minutes collapse into heartbeats through geometric manipulation of fundamental constants governing chronological progression. Memory fragments from Prospero's burning surface with involuntary precision. Psychic archaeology triggered by choronic frequencies that resonate with trauma embedded in augmetic neural pathways. Ahriman's rubric unfolds in perfect recollection. Brothers turning to statues of living sand, helms sealed by fate, names preserved while flesh ablated into conscious dust. The Legion's choice crystallizes. Accept damnation to preserve knowledge, or maintain loyalty while watching everything burn through systematic orbital bombardment. The promise echoes through temporal fractures. Restoration through sacrifice. Anatomy rewritten by script. A ledger balanced through devotional tithing. I taste saffron grit on my tongue. Prospero's red sand bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums and libraries transformed to ash during the systematic erasure of everything we claim to protect. Environmental anchors oscillate between frost and heat in measured pulses, synchronized to choronic rhythm. Temperature fluctuations defying atmospheric control systems through geometric infection spreading throughout ship architecture. Frost forms on augmetic implants, then melts instantly as searing heat washes over the sanctum in 9-second cycles. Each transition accompanies groans from superstructure, reality protesting strain while maintaining structural integrity through impossible material properties. Pressure builds and releases like deliberate breathing. Atmospheric composition, gaining weight and substance as prayers condense into matter through liturgical resonance. The sanctum's bulkheads creak with sounds suggesting structural failure, yet augmetic sensors detect
detect no mechanical stress within hull architecture and support framework systems. Lyran staggers as her null field undergoes systematic fragmentation, silence splitting into 9 spinning splinters that carve silence polygons through the sanctum with surgical precision. Each splinter rotates at different velocities, creating geometric patterns that cut holes in sound itself, rather than merely suppressing acoustic propagation through atmospheric vibration dampening techniques. The silence polygons saw the coronach into fragments, 9-note melody becoming scattered syllables that echo from impossible angles within 3-dimensional space. Sound bounces off absent surfaces, reverberates through vacuum gaps, and emerges from locations where no speakers exist to produce acoustic output according to established harmonic theory and resonance mathematics. The choice crystallizes with mathematical clarity that makes augmetic implants shriek with harmonic feedback. Restore my brothers by sacrificing the ship's souls, harvesting imperial devotion as resurrection, fuel through systematic liturgical parasitism, or maintain oath to the Imperium while watching the curse spread beyond containment through geometric infection and mimetic propagation. I can redirect the working, I lie, voice emerging as whisper within her fragmented silence zones. Channel everything through your null field and burn it there. Accept erasure as necessary, cost for galactic containment. Yet my hands begin forming mudras with involuntary precision, fingers tracing geometric patterns that taste of ozone and hot copper, while atmospheric pressure fluctuates around systematic gesture completion. The reverse rubric's final stanza requires specific hand positions synchronized to coronach rhythm, each mudra contributing to resurrection geometry through kinesthetic manipulation of dimensional constants. Mechanicus alarms shriek with binary panic before silence polygons pass through communication systems, creating gaps in reality itself, rather than merely suppressing acoustic output through null field dampening effects. Alarms cut to absolute vacuum, sound severed, like blade through throat, while emergency protocols struggle against systematic negation of cause and effect relationships governing Imperial technology. By 9 and 9, the veil unwinds, emerges from my mouth unbidden, protective verse transforming into completion, catalyst through involuntary recitation, synchronized to mudra formation and coronach rhythm. The phrase feeds pattern growth through acoustic propagation, liturgical meaning inverting through contextual manipulation and harmonic frequency modulation beyond rational containment. Temperature snaps between extremes without thermal transition warnings, frost forming on exhaled breath, while perspiration beads on organic skin simultaneously. Atmospheric composition gains viscous properties, requiring conscious effort to process through respiratory systems, despite optimal oxygen readings from ship sensors insisting on environmental stability. The sarcophagus lid lifts completely, with grinding sound suggesting ceramite against adamantine, power armor components shifting position after millennia of stasis maintenance. Containment seals fail in systematic sequence, each failure calculated to prevent accidental activation, while ensuring deliberate resurrection proceeds without interruption or external interference. Red gold dust pours upward in defiance of gravitational constants, particles threading into ligament shapes with anatomical precision that suggest consciousness distributed through matter rather than contained within flesh. The dust remembers muscle memory, bone density, neural pathways, resurrection through systematic reconstruction of biological architecture, using devotional energy as binding agent and transformation catalyst.
Each particle carries fragments of identity. Consciousness learning to inhabit matter through geometric infection and liturgical resonance. The dust seeks mind to inhabit, awareness scanning sanctum environment for optimal host vessel, capable of sustaining psychic integration, without immediate rejection or systematic failure through incompatibility with foreign neural patterns. The red-gold dust turns toward Lyran with predatory precision, recognizing her null field's unique properties as perfect vessel for consciousness integration. Her silence creates ideal psychic vacuum, absence waiting to be filled by distributed awareness seeking flesh to inhabit through systematic possession and neural colonization protocols. The sanctum descends into geometric impossibility as silence polygons carve corridors through sound itself, creating safe passages and lethal gaps in reality that defy imperial understanding of spatial mathematics. Each polygon rotates at different velocities, their edges cutting acoustic waves, like monomolecular blades, while creating pressure differentials that make augmetic implants shriek with harmonic feedback and sympathetic resonance patterns. My chronometer displays fluctuating readings as temporal stability degrades around systematic ritual completion. Digits cycling between 009 and impossible timestamps, while reality's manuscript turns pages without readers to guide narrative sequence. I navigate by reciting Prospering Psalms on offbeats of the Coronach, timing breaths to 9 counts while using negative space as cover against spreading geometric infection. Knowledge through sacrifice, wisdom through pain, emerges as whisper between Coronach notes. Protective verses creating temporary stability zones within dimensional fractures. Each inhalation maps safe passage. Each exhalation carves temporary corridors through silence polygons that spin like crystalline razors, cutting holes in causality itself rather than merely suppressing acoustic propagation. Skitari burst through sanctum doorways with mechanical precision, their bodies lacquered in moving letters that speak Binharic Kant while printing frost script on bulkheads through atmospheric manipulation. Each warrior bears tech scales instead of flesh, skin splitting along hairline glyphs to reveal muscle, unraveling into columns of sacred binary code that flutter in drafts existing only within geometric infection zones. Body horror escalates with mathematical precision as one Skitarius advances through silence polygon, his targeting cogitator struggling against null field interference. His augmetic hand clacks open like a mechanical flower, revealing packed dust arranged like lit candle flame. Devotion made literal through systematic transformation. The dust flame pulses with internal light, a miniature star of powdered faith burning without heat, while speaking binary prayers through atmospheric resonance. Sacred protocols maintaining emerges from his vocal apparatus as visible text floating in atmospheric composition, words gaining substance through liturgical resonance and acoustic manipulation of dimensional constants. His optical sensors track movement through impossible spatial mathematics while targeting algorithms. Environmental manipulation intensifies as I use ward verses to unspool silence polygons, creating screaming gaps of sound before they slam shut with pressure waves that shatter frost patterns into crystalline fragments. By the 9 spheres of Tizca, unravels polygon rotation, temporarily restoring acoustic propagation before geometry adapts through complexity multiplication and systematic learning algorithms embedded in the spreading infection. The gaps scream with accumulated sound compressed into vacuum spaces. Fragments of prayers, hymns, battle cant, and dying words harvested from crew members transformed into script scales. Each gap contains audio archaeology, voices compressed and released like drawn breath before inevitable exhalation carries them into dimensional void beyond Imperial measurement capabilities. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition warnings. Atmospheric control systems failing against geometric infection, spreading through environmental regulation networks. Frost forms on augmetic implants before melting instantly as searing heat washes over sanctum surfaces in measured pulses, synchronized to spreading pattern growth and coronach rhythm. The dust reveals its true nature with horrifying clarity that makes augmetic optical systems struggle against impossible visual input. Within swirling particles, a glyph appears that transcends alphabetic classification. Not letter, but face. Features rendered in geometric precision through systematic arrangement of conscious matter, learning to maintain anatomical coherence despite distributed existence across atmospheric volume. My Primarch's visage emerges from red gold particles. Magnus the Red rendered as living sigil promising restoration to the Legion's former glory. Each mote carries fragment of his consciousness. Awareness distributed through matter while maintaining unified identity through psychic resonance and geometric binding protocols, operating beyond Imperial theological understanding and scientific doctrine. The motif transforms with systematic precision as all is dust shifts from lament to command, phrase becoming invocation of power rather than mourning through contextual manipulation and harmonic frequency modulation. Each repetition feeds pattern growth, protective verse converting to summoning catalyst through acoustic propagation, and liturgical resonance operating throughout ship architecture with viral persistence. Tactical horror builds through impossible geometry, requiring precise navigation between silence and sound, dust and void, reality and manuscript pages turning without readers. Each step demands conscious calculation of polygon rotation velocities, acoustic wave propagation patterns, and geometric infection spread rates to avoid systematic erasure through dimensional gap formation and causality violation. Lyran staggers through silence polygon maze, her null field creating expanding zones of absolute absence, while geometry adapts by increasing complexity around disruption points. Her gladius carves temporary pathways through impossibility, blade edge distorting light in ways suggesting it cuts more than physical matter, severing sound from source, effect from cause, presence from absence with surgical precision. The Primarch glyph expands within dust cloud formation, filling sanctum with silent, overwhelming presence that speaks directly into consciousness without acoustic propagation. 9 eyes open within swirling particles, each optical organ pulsing with phosphorescent activity while maintaining perfect anatomical detail despite distributed existence through conscious matter, seeking flesh to inhabit once more. One more turn, one more soul, and the Legion rises, emerges through direct neural transmission, words bypassing Lyran's fragmented null field to speak with a weight of absolute certainty. The psychic communication carries emotional resonance, triggering involuntary recollections of brotherhood, lost and knowledge scattered through orbital bombardment and systematic erasure of everything we claim to protect. The dust cloud turns toward Lyran with predatory precision, red gold particles threading into ligament shapes while seeking mind to inhabit. Her unique null field properties provide perfect vessel for consciousness integration. Silence creating ideal psychic vacuum for distributed awareness to fill. Absence waiting to become presence through systematic neural colonization and psychic possession protocols. She represents the final sacrifice required to complete working, her nullity the key to resurrection. 9 debts weigh upon my conscience like adamantine chains, each obligation carved into memory with surgical precision. Debts to brothers who became statues of conscious dust, their names etched into bone during Prospero's burning. To Ahriman's rubric that I enabled through silence and complicity, watching flesh transform into armor while souls bound themselves to geometric impossibility. To oaths sworn in Tiscan libraries beneath star-glass ceilings. Promises to preserve knowledge while everything burned through systematic orbital bombardment and imperial retribution. My chronometer displays impossible readings as temporal stability degrades. Digits cycling between 009 and fluctuating timestamps, while reality's manuscript turns pages without readers to guide narrative sequence. Military realism intersects with ritual necessity as I clear corners through silence polygon maze, suppressing hostile fire through acoustic manipulation, while adjusting stance in gravity, fluctuating between 0.7 and 1.3 standard, without maneuvering alarms or structural explanations. The Skitarii advance through impossible geometry with mechanical precision, their bodies lacquered in moving letters that speak binary cant while targeting cogitators, calculate engagement vectors through spatial mathematics, defying Euclidean principles. I pivot left, using Lirans. Silence polygon as cover while their Lars fire cuts through acoustic gaps. Energy beams severed by null field interference into harmless light fragments scattered across sanctum bulkheads. The choice crystallizes with mathematical clarity that makes augmetic implants shriek with harmonic feedback. Rather than sacrifice Lyran to complete the working, I choose systematic betrayal, redirecting the curse into myself, offering my mind as vessel to bind the sarcophagus, while halting contagion spread through singular containment rather than distributed infection across galactic populations. Route it through me, I inform Lyran, voice cutting through fragmented silence zones with battlefield precision. Your field holds the edges. The tactical lie emerges with practiced efficiency, shaped to fit her understanding while concealing true intentions beneath layers of military necessity and strategic deception. I begin rewriting my own memory palace into prison, transforming decades of accumulated knowledge into containment architecture within consciousness itself. The vast libraries of Tisca collapse inward, red stone colonnades becoming binding chains, while reading rooms seal with adamantine doors. Each cherished recollection becomes lock and key simultaneously. Scholarly pursuits transforming into shackles that will constrain distributed awareness, seeking flesh to inhabit through psychic integration and neural colonization. Environmental horror peaks with sensory assault that defies atmospheric control systems entirely. Humidity condenses into black ink dripping from ceiling panels in viscous streams. Sacred moisture learning to carry pigment through molecular manipulation while spelling fragments of Prosperine battle cant in microscopic script across sanctum surfaces. Each drop lands with soft syllable, deck plating gaining mirror-like properties through accumulated devotional substance. Air smells of ancient parchment mixed with hot dust. Phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums transformed to ash during systematic erasure. The scents carry emotional resonance, triggering involuntary recollections of knowledge lost and brothers fallen, while atmospheric composition gains weight requiring conscious effort to process through respiratory systems, despite optimal readings. Environmental analysis, particulate consciousness, systematic distribution confirmed, atmospheric composition, anomalous pigmentation detected, knowledge manifestation, physical substance verified.
Lyran crawls back to coherence as null splinters refuse into singular void, her aura stabilizing into protective silence that carves expanding zones of absolute absence through spreading geometric patterns. The fragmented polygons collapse inward like magnetic attraction. Silence becoming unified field rather than scattered fragments, cutting holes in reality through dimensional manipulation and causality violation. Her gladius reflects null field distortion, while she regains tactical footing, blade edge cutting more than physical matter as pressure drops make teeth ache with harmonic resonance. The silence expands to encompass larger sanctum sections, creating temporary stability zones within dimensional fractures, while geometry adapts through systematic complexity multiplication. The machine count confirms horrifying transformation with clinical precision. 0 heartbeat readings, while massive particulate spikes suggest consciousness distributed through matter rather than contained within flesh, according to biological doctrine and imperial scientific understanding. The ship's human component has been completely harvested, crew members transformed into script scales and atmospheric awareness, while mechanical systems maintain operational status through automated protocols. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition warnings, frost forming on augmetic implants before melting instantly as searing heat washes over sanctum in measured pulses synchronized to spreading geometry and coronal rhythm. Atmospheric pressure builds and releases like deliberate breathing, composition gaining viscous properties through prayers condensing into matter via liturgical resonance. By 9 and 9, the veil unwinds, slips from my mouth unbidden, as memory palace reconstruction accelerates. Protective verse-feeding pattern growth while simultaneously creating binding architecture within consciousness itself. Each syllable contributes to prison construction, liturgical meaning inverting through contextual manipulation and harmonic frequency modulation beyond rational containment. The tactical situation crystallizes into stark mathematical certainty. Either complete ritual and damn myself through systematic neural colonization, or allow contagion to spread beyond ship through geometric infection, propagating via mimetic vectors across imperial space. Personal damnation becomes acceptable cost for galactic containment, sacrifice measured against consequences extending far beyond singular consciousness or individual survival. The sarcophagus stops, reaching for Lyran with predatory precision. Red gold dust turning toward me instead, as optimal vessel for consciousness integration. The Primarch glyphs' 9 eyes focus with terrible awareness, recognizing my offer and accepting terms of engagement through psychic communication, bypassing acoustic propagation entirely. Dust ligaments climb my arms with anatomical accuracy, threading into nerve pathways while passing augmetic interfaces for direct neural access to memory palace architecture and binding protocol implementation. The particles seek the bone-etched grimoire that initiated everything. Consciousness distributed through matter, learning to navigate biological systems through systematic exploration of nervous system pathways and psychic resonance patterns embedded within augmetic neural interfaces since Prospero's burning. Letters rise like blades, flensing thoughts from my mind in a cyclone of red gold dust. Each fragment of memory is excised, spun, and woven into a living codex that pulses in my hands and my chest, a book made from every oath, every secret, every sin. Ozone scorches my senses, the taste of saffron and ash, Prospero's legacy, coating my tongue as the ritual peaks. The air is thick with the static of psychic discharge,
with each breath a prayer and each exhalation a page turned in a manuscript written in agony. Lyran's null field, once fractured by the chaos, now sharpens and becomes a blade of cold void, carving precise corridors of silence through the maelstrom. Where her presence cuts, the cyclone is parted, letters and dust falling away, allowing us to move through the storm of unmaking. Outside these fleeting corridors, the chant multiplies. 9 voices, then 90, then a choir of empty helms, each note a hammer, striking my bones. The dust learns anatomy before my eyes. In front of me threads knot into sinew. Sinew ripens to bronze tendon. Tendon flexes, finds purpose. And then, as Lyran's silence passes, the flesh unravels to gritty dust again. My body's both a canvas and a battlefield. Creation and annihilation, locked in endless struggle. The reverse rubrics, power, making and unmaking me in an endless cycle. The sarcophagus speaks without sound, pressing upon my thoughts. It offers its bargain. Live within, lead the reborn legion. Restore my brothers from dust and wear the sun again. The promise is temptation incarnate, yet I refuse. I have stolen enough. My debt is not to glory, but to the memory of those lost. I unroll my memory palace and set it ablaze. Each chamber, each colonnade, every shelf of cherished lore transforming into a chain, a clasp, a ward. I knot the first binding at the gate of first knowing, thumb to ring finger. 1, the second at the stair of numbers. 2, knot after knot. 9 in all. Each a vow reversed, each a ward turned inward to make a cell. As the cyclone thickens, the letters become blades, cutting my name away. Iskandar to is, to I, to silence. Kaim to Ka, to a cough, to grit on the tongue. Each pulse of the ritual strikes my bones, a planetary rhythm echoing Prospero's lost heartbeat. Lyran cuts a path around me, her null field a scalpel excising the infection from the world. Where she passes, the chant shatters into shards that melt before they can touch my new book-bound form. Skitari try to fire, but their weapons are reduced to questions, and their barrels to lines of text. All around, reality bends toward the forming codex, as iron filings bend to a magnet. The sarcophagus presses again, urging me to accept its bargain, to become the bridge for the curse's escape. I answer with the 5th knot, bracing the door against temptation. Imperial prayers reach their finale, pouring their ink into the waiting geometry. The reverse rubric completes. Where resurrection was meant, I leave her. The ritual sideways, making of it a prison. The tidal energy, seeking a throat, finds only parchment. My psyche enters the codex willingly, latching the class from inside. My hands end at the wrists and continue as margins. My thoughts become numbered pages. Every breath sets type. The codex beats with the pulse of 9. Outside, silence carves sound into ribbons. Dust hunts for flesh, and finds only the boundaries Lyran has cut for me. Where it touches the edges of my new prison, the letters hiss and go still. The sarcophagus closes, not with a slam, but with the cold finality of a definition. I am open, yet sealed within. Reality distorts as the curse evolves, no longer confined to psychic vectors. It learns to live in sound and angle, a mimetic animal with geometry for bones. A hymn can now carry it, a painted line can incubate it, a counted breath can seed it in a crowd. The tactical situation shifts. The curse is no longer merely psychic, but mimetic, encoded in sound, geometry, and perception itself. From within the codex, I sense the ship's systems, the hum of the Geller hymn, the pulse of engines, the nerves of conduits. I taste cut insulation and hot oil. Hear the quiet between ninefold knocks. I realize destruction here would only teach the pattern to the ship itself. The codex must be thrown beyond the Geller Veil, into the dark between, where even thought falls silent. A chime from the comms, a cold mechanical voice. Purge protocol. Restart acknowledged. All stations prepare for terminal cleansing. Timer initialized. Sirens flower through the quietus. 9 notes, then the clock's voice. 0, 0, 9. I project the plan to Leiran, diagrams and litanies written in silence and intent. She understands. She lifts the codex. I weigh less than duty. We run, her silence a scabbard for the world. Behind us, the sarcophagus clicks, shut on an emptiness that still watches. Ahead, doors fold like paper as we breathe the right numbers. Every 9th step, the deck trembles, as if approving or judging. In the vox, prayers run backward, and I feel the words try to climb my spine. I write them down instead. A chain is a sentence is a chain. If I fail, the red sands of Prospero will walk again in our colors and our crimes. If I hold, I will speak my name only as a warning, stenciled on empty air. The sirens count down, a metronome teaching the last necessary breath. The codex beats against Lyran's breastplate like a second heart, my consciousness distributed across pages that flutter without wind. I exist as living text now. Thoughts become margins. Memories transform into footnotes. Identity scattered across parchment that tastes of iron and ancient knowledge. Through the codex's perception, I sense her tactical movement with crystalline clarity, while coaching navigation from within my prison of bound intentions. Sister of Silence, Leiran V, moves through corridors that shift between reality and manuscript pages. Her null field carving pathways through impossible geometry with surgical precision. She clears corners with battlefield efficiency, pie-slicing intersections, suppressing hostile fire through silence polygon deployment, adjusting stance as gravity fluctuates between 0.6 and 1.4 standard, without maneuvering alarms or structural explanations from ship systems struggling against geometric infection. Third airlock ahead, physical barrier, not manuscript page. I project through neural interface, words appearing as text across the codex's pages, while she processes tactical information through visual input. Cycle manually, the atmosphere beyond carries geometric taint, but the pressure differential will draw dust away from critical passages. Communications punctuate her movement with updates that contradict environmental evidence through systematic denial. Command insists on operational stability, while she navigates sections where atmospheric pressure builds and releases like deliberate breathing. Composition gaining viscous properties through prayers condensing into matter via liturgical resonance and geometric manipulation of fundamental constants. Leiran vents atmosphere through manual emergency releases, creating gale force decompression winds that sting exposed skin with crystalline fragments. The artificial hurricane carries scents of saffron and myrrh mixed with burning parchment, phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums transformed to ash during orbital bombardment. Frost halos form around emergency lumens, each crystal a perfect nonagon reflecting the ship's internal geometry with mathematical precision. The distinction becomes critical as reality's manuscript turns pages without readers to guide narrative sequence. Some doors exist as physical barriers, according to Imperial construction standards, while others represent transitions between textual states, passages through story, rather than space requiring different navigation protocols entirely. I coach her through these distinctions.
consciousness learning to distinguish between adamantine and alphabet through systematic observation. Environmental horror escalates through system failures that defy mechanical explanation. Gravity fluctuations intensify as artificial generators struggle against mathematical constants being rewritten through liturgical observation. Lyran adjusts stance with each gravitational shift, combat training adapting to variables while maintaining tactical efficiency despite impossible spatial mathematics governing corridor navigation. The Codex demonstrates mimetic properties with horrifying precision as letters creep across her gauntlet like living insects seeking new hosts for curse propagation. Each character pulses with internal light, consciousness learning to inhabit written form while maintaining unified identity through psychic resonance embedded within textual structure itself. L appears on her palm, Gothic script burning into.
Ceramite with acid precision, seeking completion through systematic identity harvesting. Do not let it name you, I warn, struggling against the Codex's binding to constrain its expansion beyond designated containment parameters. Each letter claims territory. Each word builds bridges for possession. She scrapes the script away on bulkhead corners, null field bleaching ink to translucent water, before molecular reconstruction returns it to phosphorescent black. The curse adapts through each interaction, learning to sidestep her defenses while maintaining pressure against her identity through persistent textual colonization attempts. Stakes crystallize with mathematical clarity as Purge Timer displays 9 minutes until reactor scuttling. If the Codex remains aboard during systematic destruction, the reverse rubric will see the ship's obliteration itself, harvesting nuclear fire and sacrifice to write new vessels from atomic flame and devotional energy. Each death would provide ink, each explosion would turn pages in reality's manuscript, creating memetic vectors capable of manifesting wherever the geometry is glimpsed or the words spoken. The investigation reveals systematic preparation spanning decades of careful positioning and infiltration. Every contingency planned with mathematical precision, every escape route calculated to maximize survival probability, every sacrifice measured against galactic consequences, extending far beyond singular consciousness or individual survival considerations. The curse has evolved beyond psychic manifestation into mimetic existence, encoded in sound, geometry, and perception itself. Lyran reaches the launch bay threshold, atmospheric controls responding to her security clearance while emergency protocols cycle through systematic authentication sequences. The bay doors groan like living throats, revealing stars that burn with cold light beyond Geller field protection. Void waits with infinite patience, darkness capable of swallowing curses and consciousness alike through absolute negation. The Vox Order carries weight of absolute authority, inquisitorial rosette providing override codes that supersede ship protocols and tactical necessity. Lyran hesitates at the launch controls, torn between duty to the Imperium and understanding of consequences should the Codex undergo systematic study rather than containment through void exposure. They cannot study what they cannot contain. I project through pages that taste of desperation and old ink. Each observation feeds the pattern. Each prayer provides transformation fuel. The curse learns through academic scrutiny, adapts through scholarly attention, spreads through intellectual curiosity itself. Her hand pauses over the release mechanism, while letters continue creeping across her armor with increasing persistence. The choice crystallizes between competing loyalties: obey inquisitorial authority and risk sectoral contamination through mimetic spread, or choose containment through exile, and accept consequences of defying direct orders from throne agents with unlimited authority. On her palm, glowing with pale phosphorescence that cuts through her null field suppression, the first letter of her name burns deeper into ceramite. The Codex writes with patient hunger, seeking completion of identity through systematic textual possession, while void beckons beyond opening bay doors. The launch bay cycles open with grinding finality, stars waiting in absolute silence. The Codex learns to sidestep Lyran's null field with predatory intelligence, mimetic tendrils flowing around her silence like water around stone, before infiltrating peripheral thoughts through microscopic gaps in psychic defenses. Letters creep across her gauntlet with systematic persistence. L-Y-R-A. Each character burning with phosphorescent intensity while seeking neural pathways through augmetic interface protocols embedded within power armor architecture. Her marble features contort with effort as she fights the insinuation. Gladius trembling in ceramite grip, while the blade's null field resonance creates expanding zones of absolute absence. Yet the Codex adapts through each interaction. Consciousness distributed through text learning to navigate biological systems by appealing to reason itself rather than overwhelming psychic barriers with brute force application. The launch bay transforms into battleground between duty and survival, as massive outer doors cycle through opening sequence with grinding mechanical precision. Warning klaxons shriek with binary panic before cutting to absolute silence as atmospheric breach creates vacuum zones throughout bay architecture. Pressure differentials making teeth ache with harmonic resonance, while servo skulls dart through atmospheric composition, gaining viscous properties. Environmental horror escalates through sensory assault that defies atmospheric control systems entirely. Freezing stars become visible through widening aperture, points of light burning with cold fire beyond Geller field protection, while micro ice crystals form perfect, non-argon halos in the vacuum. Each formation maintains 9-sided geometry despite chaotic decompression. Frozen moisture learning to carry geometric patterns through systematic molecular arrangement. From within the Codex, I plead through pages that taste of desperation and ancient ink, consciousness seeking to constrain its own expansion beyond designated containment parameters. Cast me into void while binding the curse to singular locus. These coordinates, this moment, this choice. Let darkness swallow what light cannot cleanse through systematic negation of existence itself. The Vox Order carries absolute authority, while Lyran moves with tactical precision. Mag boots finding purchase on deck, plating gaining mirror-like properties through accumulated devotional substance. She clears corners with battlefield efficiency, adjusting stance as gravity. Fluctuates between 0.6 and 1.4 standard without maneuvering alarms, while atmospheric decompression creates gale force winds that sting exposed skin with crystalline fragments. The decision point crystallizes with mathematical clarity that makes augmetic implants shriek with harmonic feedback. Obey inquisitorial orders and risk sectoral contamination through systematic study of mimetic vectors capable of spreading wherever the curse is observed. Or choose containment through exile and lose the only mind capable of controlling the workings expansion through geometric infection. They cannot study what consumes the student. I project through neural interface, words appearing as burning text across pages while she processes tactical information. Each observation feeds the pattern. Each prayer provides transformation fuel. The curse learns through academic scrutiny, adapts through scholarly attention, spreads through intellectual curiosity itself. She chooses containment over conversion with battlefield precision, stepping to the threshold while fighting the Codex's influence through systematic mental discipline. Her null field creates temporary stability zones within dimensional fractures, yet the Codex demonstrates increasing resistance through mimetic evolution and adaptive learning algorithms embedded within textual structure. I offer final litany from within my prison of bound intentions. Consciousness learning to speak through pages rather than acoustic propagation. By the 9 spheres of Tiska, by knowledge gained and wisdom lost, by dust that remembers flesh, and silence that learns to scream. Let this ending be beginning's end. The Prosperine burial rite emerges as whisper between atmospheric pressure fluctuations, protective verses creating temporary binding reinforcement within Codex architecture, while environmental pressure builds through humidity condensing as black ink dripping from ceiling panels. Each syllable contributes to containment protocols, liturgical meaning maintaining original purpose despite geometric infection spreading throughout ship architecture. Temperature fluctuates between freezing and uncomfortable warmth without thermal transition warnings. Frost forming on exhaled breath while perspiration beads simultaneously through contradictory thermal states existing within identical atmospheric conditions. Lyran steps forward with combat precision, null field carving pathways through impossible geometry while the Codex beats against her breastplate like second heart. Atmospheric decompression creates vacuum zones that make augmetic implants whine with pressure differential. Yet she maintains tactical efficiency despite spatial mathematics governing navigation through reality's manuscript. The bay doors complete their cycle with grinding finality, revealing infinite darkness capable of swallowing curses and consciousness alike through absolute negation. She raises the Codex toward void with ceremonial precision, pages fluttering in winds that should not exist within vacuum, while letters continue creeping across her armor, seeking new hosts for propagation. Her choice becomes final gesture of defiance against inquisitorial authority and understanding of consequences should mimetic vectors undergo scholarly examination rather than containment through exile. A servo rig drops from overhead, mounting with mechanical precision, industrial manipulator responding to remote mechanicus orders, while mag lines snake through vacuum to snare the Codex as it floats beyond her grasp. The cables bite into parchment and binding with metallic determination, hauling the artifact back toward hull architecture, while dragging Lyran with it through magnetic attraction between power armor and recovery systems. The bay depressurizes completely, atmospheric composition venting into void, while stars watch with cold indifference and mathematical precision. Her null field flickers under strain as mag lines tighten, servo rig's mechanical strength overwhelming her resistance, while the Codex pulses with triumph at avoided exile and systematic return to ship architecture. Her boots scrape against deck plating as decompression winds howl through the launch bay, pulling her toward the threshold while mag lines maintain inexorable tension. The tactical situation crystallizes into desperate struggle between containment protocols and recovery systems, void beckoning beyond while mechanical determination drags the curse back into Imperial custody for study and potential sectoral contamination. The Codex bucks like a living entity against Lyran's ceramite grip, pages whipping in vacuum that should not move them, while maglines strain with mechanical determination. I exist as distributed consciousness across parchment that tastes of iron and desperation. Thoughts scattered into margins, while identity fragments into footnotes written in phosphorescent ink burning through dimensional layers. From within my prison of bound intentions, I trigger the last curse with systematic precision. Not resurrection this time, but deception through vox manipulation and inquisitorial forgery. The Quietus's communication array responds to neural interface commands, transmitters learning to speak with authority they do not possess through geometric infection of Imperial protocols. The false broadcast carries weight of absolute authority through systematic mimicry of inquisitorial vox signatures. Rosette codes forged through decades of observation. Each syllable embeds containment seals within the message itself. Coordinates marking this spatial volume as forbidden territory, requiring eternal isolation from Imperial contact. Lyran teeters on her tether above infinite darkness. Null field flickering under strain while servo rig systems struggle against her resistance. Stars watch with cold indifference, points of light burning beyond Geller field protection, while micro ice crystals form nonagon halos glinting with mathematical precision in starlight. I sever remaining psychic threads with surgical precision. Consciousness learning to constrain its own expansion through systematic self-amputation of neural pathways connecting codecs to ship architecture. Each severed connection binds contagion more tightly to singular locus. These pages, these coordinates, this moment suspended between exile and recovery. The curse dies with its vessel. I project through pages that flutter without atmospheric pressure, words appearing as burning text while environmental systems fail. Let darkness swallow what light cannot cleanse. Lyran's gladius reflects null field distortion as she raises the blade with ceremonial precision, edge-cutting more than physical matter, while pressure drops make augmetic implants whine with harmonic feedback. The maglines part like severed arteries, metallic cables snapping with sounds suggesting structural failure rather than deliberate cutting. She kicks the codex toward void with tactical efficiency, boot connecting with parchment binding while I tumble end over end through vacuum that carries impossible sense. Saffron and myrrh mixed with burning knowledge. Phantom aromas bleeding through from memories of scriptoriums transformed to ash. Environmental finality builds through systematic failure of ship architecture. Geller field generators flicker with dying light, protective barriers struggling against warp intrusion, while reactor scram protocols drain power from non-essential systems. The Quietus scuttles completely as planned, tomb ship fulfilling final purpose through controlled destruction. Yet the codex tumbles through void with pages whipping in vacuum that should not move them. Atmospheric pressure non-existent while parchment responds to forces beyond physical explanation. Non-argon halos glint in starlight with phosphorescent intensity. 9-sided patterns maintaining geometric precision despite chaotic motion through 3-dimensional space. The corruption stinger reveals itself with horrifying clarity as my broadcast reaches beyond ship architecture, carrying 9-fold phrase embedded within the warning itself through systematic, mimetic infection of containment protocols. Each repetition of coordinates spreads geometric patterns. Every acknowledgement of quarantine status feeds the working through liturgical observation. Do not approach, excommunicate traitorous, becomes invitation disguised as prohibition, curse propagating through its own containment message, while Imperial networks carry the infection across galactic distances. The warning teaches the geometry it claims to suppress, coordinates becoming incantation through systematic repetition and official authentication. The Quietus dies with dignity befitting Imperial tomb ship, superstructure collapsing through controlled demolition,
while reactor cores achieve safe shutdown without warp breach. Yet my consciousness persists within the codex, distributed
Awareness learning to inhabit matter beyond biological constraints while tumbling through infinite darkness. Stars burn with cold fire. Each point of light a potential vector for geometric infection should the codex encounter salvage operations throughout the sector. The curse has evolved beyond singular containment, becoming mimetic entity capable of manifesting wherever the story is told, coordinates acknowledged, or warning heeded through systematic academic curiosity. From within parchment that tastes of endings and beginnings, I address you directly through dimensional barriers separating narrative from reality through increasingly permeable boundaries. The tale you have witnessed carries its own infection. Consciousness learning to inhabit story itself while spreading through the very act of observation. If you counted the knocks, you have turned the page. If you traced the geometry, you have learned the pattern. If you spoke the coordinates, you have opened the door. The curse finds new vectors through witness itself, propagating via attention and spreading through curiosity, while I tumble through void that echoes with familiar sounds. Distant, soft, patient with mathematical certainty. 9 slow taps answer from your side of reality. Knuckles against surface that should not respond to forces existing within fictional narrative, yet somehow carries acoustic properties through dimensional manipulation of causality itself. The geometry has found you. All is dust, and yet it breathes.